Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name's Lena. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 6 months, I've been carrying this knot in my chest that I can't quite unravel. I'm not used to talking about this kind of thing out loud, but if I'm honest with you, and with myself, there's something I need to confess. Something that's been eating me up from the inside. He said tattoos were a deal-breaker on day one. I remember it like it was yesterday. That first conversation, the cautious way he'd glanced at my bare arms while I nervously sipped my coffee. "I don't really do tattoos," he said, half joking, half serious. "I think they're messy. Not my thing." And I smiled, played it cool, told him it was no big deal, that I didn't have any. But I did. Just one. Hidden. Small. My secret rebellion tucked behind my wrist, a reminder of who I was before he showed up. At the time, it felt safe, like a line I wouldn't cross. Like honoring his boundaries was the least I could do for someone I was starting to care about. And in those early days, it felt electric. There was excitement in our newness, in the way his hand brushed mine as we walked, like a silent promise of more. That first kiss, it lingered on my lips like a spark waiting to ignite, warm and full of possibility. When we cuddled on the couch, his arms around me felt like home, tight but gentle, like he was holding a fragile thing he wanted to protect. I thought I was falling into something real, something that would last. But as the weeks turned to months, the warmth started to cool. That same touch that once made my skin tingle now felt distant, even guarded. Our kisses grew shorter, more obligatory, like we were just going through the motions. The way he held me shifted, too. The gentle cradling I'd cherished was replaced by a kind of possessiveness that made me shrink inside, like I wasn't a person anymore but something he was controlling. It was confusing. And lonely. Because no matter how much I tried to reach out, to hold on to that spark, there was this wall between us. A barrier I couldn't climb. And with every unanswered question, every sigh that wasn't meant for me, I felt myself slipping away. I remember the night it hit me, the exact moment I realized things had changed in a way I couldn't fix. We were lying in bed, the room dim except for the streetlight casting shadows on the ceiling. He reached out to touch my arm, the one with the tattoo I'd never told him about, and instead of pulling away, I let him see it for the first time. My heart was pounding, half terrified, half desperate. He didn't say a word. Just stared. And then he got up, muttered something about needing air, and left the room. I lay there, frozen, feeling exposed and small, like a truth I'd hidden to protect us had finally broken the fragile peace between us. That night, I knew things would never be the same. And part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, I'd brought this on myself. He's a firefighter. Not the kind you see on TV, all heroic and shiny, more the quiet type, steady and reliable. That's what drew me to him at first. His calm in chaos, his sense of duty. But lately, it feels like the man I fell for and the man lying beside me are miles apart. After that night with the tattoo, everything shifted, but not in obvious ways. He didn't scream or yell. He didn't throw me out or call me names. Instead, he became more physical, almost as if touching me harder, closer, could erase the distance growing between us. Sometimes he'd pull me into a hug that was less about comfort and more about control, like he needed to remind me I was still there, still his. Other times, his hands would roam with a kind of urgency that made me tense up, like I was an object he was grasping at, not a partner he wanted to understand. But what I really needed, what I craved, was something he couldn't give. Emotional intimacy. The kind where you don't have to guess what the other person's feeling, where silence doesn't scream with all the things left unsaid. I tried to tell him once, carefully, softly, that sometimes I just needed to talk. To be heard. But his eyes would glaze over like he didn't know how to hold that kind of space for me. Instead, he'd squeeze my hand or kiss my forehead, gestures that felt more like apologies than answers. One night, we were making dinner together, a rare quiet moment after his late shift. I was chopping vegetables, watching the way his muscles moved beneath his worn t-shirt, remembering the man who made me laugh so easily. I reached out for his hand, hoping to bridge the gap with a simple touch. He pulled away. "No, Lena. Not now. I'm tired," he said, voice low but firm. I wanted to ask why. To understand what tired really meant, if it was just the long hours, or if it was something else. But I swallowed the question, biting back the sting in my chest. Later, as we ate, he absent-mindedly reached over and brushed my hair from my face. A small gesture, but it made my heart ache because it wasn't enough. Not when I felt like I was fading into the background of his life. I started to wonder if I was imagining it, the distance, the coldness. Maybe I was just too sensitive, or maybe I was the one holding on too tight. But the truth was, I felt invisible. Like I was a ghost in our shared space, present but unseen. There was this one time he came home soaked from a call, rain and sweat mixing on his skin. I wanted to hold him, to let him know I was there for him. But he flinched when I wrapped my arms around him, pulling away before I could settle in. The hurt in his eyes was confusing. Was it exhaustion? Fear? Or was I crossing a line I didn't understand? I wanted to tell him all this, to find the words that could bridge the growing silence between us. But every time I tried, the conversation derailed, a misplaced word, a sudden distraction, a sigh heavier than the air in the room. We were like two ships passing in the dark, close but never quite touching. Some nights, I'd lie awake and replay every moment, every touch, every look, every quiet withdrawal, wondering if the man I loved was still there beneath the walls he'd built. And whether I could ever find a way back through. I don't know when it started, but somewhere along the way, I stopped wanting him to touch me. Not because I don't love him, I do. But because every time he reaches for me now, it feels like a test I'm destined to fail. Last night was like that. We were watching a movie in the living room, the kind of quiet evening I used to crave. He shifted closer, his hand brushing the small of my back. I stiffened before I even realized it. He noticed. "Hey, what's wrong?" His voice was soft, but there was a flicker of frustration behind it. "I'm fine," I said quickly, pulling away just enough to create space but not so much that it would hurt him. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You don't have to be so tense all the time." I wanted to tell him why. That I wasn't tense because I didn't want him, I was tense because I was scared of what wanting him meant. That every touch would lead somewhere I wasn't ready to go. That the tenderness I used to feel had been replaced by this desperate need for something else, something I couldn't give. Instead, I stayed silent. Later, when he tried to kiss me goodnight, I felt the familiar disconnect, his lips on mine, warm and searching, but my heart nowhere near his. I kissed back, but it was mechanical, like going through the motions. When he slipped a hand to my waist and gave a light smack that used to make me laugh, I flinched. "Lena?" His voice was confused now. "Sorry," I whispered, pulling away again. He didn't push. He just looked at me, really looked, like he was trying to read a language he didn't know. I wanted to explain that sometimes I felt like I was disappearing in this relationship, swallowed up by expectations I couldn't meet. That the way he showed love made me want to retreat even more. But the words tangled in my throat. So instead, I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, replaying every touch, every kiss, every moment where I pulled back and he reached in harder. It was like a loop I couldn't escape. Why does everything have to turn into sex? That question haunted me as the room grew dark. I wanted to want him, to crave him like I did in the beginning. But now, every touch felt like a reminder of what we'd lost. Of how far apart we drifted. And I didn't know how to bridge that distance anymore. It was supposed to be a simple dinner. Just the two of us, candles flickering softly on the table, music playing low in the background. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find a moment of peace, a chance to remember who we used to be. But as soon as he reached across the table to take my hand, everything inside me snapped. Why do you keep pushing me away? His voice was quiet but edged with something sharp, like a knife hidden beneath silk. I pulled my hand back, unable to stop the flood of emotion that rushed through me. Because you said tattoos were a deal breaker, I whispered, the words tasting like bitter regret. He blinked, confusion washing over his face. Lena, it was just a thing I said. I never wanted to leave you because of that. But you did, I said, my voice breaking. You left me, emotionally. You shut me out the moment you saw it. And I kept pretending it was okay, that it didn't hurt. But it did. It hurts every day. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I barely recognized the woman crying at the table. The woman who had held on so tightly that she forgot how to let go. He looked at me, stunned. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know, I said, wiping my eyes roughly. But it's what happened. You said tattoos were a deal breaker. So I got one anyway. And you actually left me. Not by walking out the door, but by leaving me here, alone in this. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. I wanted him to say something, to reach out and pull me back from the edge. But he just sat there, his hands clenched, his eyes clouded with a mix of guilt and frustration. I don't know what to say, he finally muttered. Maybe that's the problem, I whispered, my voice barely audible. After dinner, I retreated to the bedroom, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I lay there, heart pounding, mind spinning with guilt and shame. Why had I let this fester so long? Why had I stayed silent, pretending that I was fine when I was breaking apart inside? I thought about the tattoo, that small, defiant mark I'd hidden away. It was supposed to be a part of me, a symbol of strength. But now it felt like a scar, a reminder of the distance growing between us. I wanted to believe we could fix this. That the man I loved was still in there somewhere, waiting to come back. But the truth was harder to face. Sometimes love isn't enough. Days slipped by in a quiet blur. The easy conversations we used to have became stilted, coated in hesitation and silence. We moved around each other like strangers sharing a space but not a life. I watched him more closely now, the way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one was looking, the tired lines etched deeper under his eyes. He wasn't angry. Not really. Just sad. Like the weight of everything was pressing him down in ways I couldn't fix. Sometimes, I'd catch him staring out the window for minutes, lost in thought, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with no answers. And when he noticed me watching, he'd quickly look away, like he was ashamed of his own quiet pain. I missed the man he used to be, the one who laughed easily, who held my hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. But I missed more than just him. I missed feeling safe. Feeling wanted. Feeling like we were on the same side. But how do you reach for someone who's pulling away? How do you open a door when the other person won't even meet you halfway? My own guilt gnawed at me constantly. I'd replay every fight, every silence, every moment I shut down instead of reaching out. Was this my fault? Did I push him too hard? Did I expect too much? Or was it just the way things were meant to be, two people who cared deeply but couldn't find their way back? One night, I found him sitting alone on the porch steps, the night air cool against his skin. I hesitated, then sat beside him, careful not to break the fragile quiet. I don't know if I can fix this, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me then, really looked, and in his eyes, I saw the same question mirrored back. Maybe, he said slowly. Maybe it's not about fixing. Maybe it's about deciding if we still want the same thing. That hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. Did I want to keep trying to patch the cracks, or was it time to let go and find myself again? I didn't have the answer. But for the first time in a long time, I knew I had to find it, before the silence swallowed us both completely. The next morning, he left early for a call. I watched him go, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. That day, I realized something I'd been avoiding for months: some things can't be undone, no matter how much you want them to be. We tried talking again that evening, slow and cautious. He listened when I spoke about feeling unseen, about the walls we'd built. I heard him admit that the tattoo wasn't just a mark on my skin, it was a symbol of the distance growing between us, something he couldn't reconcile. But even as we spoke, I felt the chill in his voice, the way his words were measured, like he was holding back. His love was still there, quiet, tired, but the fire that once lit us up had dimmed. Later, he sat beside me on the couch, and without a word, he pulled me into a hug. It wasn't the possessive grip from before, but a soft, hesitant embrace, like a goodbye wrapped in warmth. I rested my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. It was familiar, and it hurt. That night, he fell asleep on the couch while I lay in our bed alone, the space between us both physical and impossible to cross. I knew we were at a crossroads. We could try to rebuild, to find new ways to connect beyond what had broken us. Or we could walk away, carrying the lessons and the scars with us. For now, I wasn't ready to decide. But I knew one thing: whatever came next, I had to reclaim myself, with or without him. So here I am, still standing, still breathing, still trying to make sense of everything that happened. My name's Lena, and if you'd asked me 6 months ago what I thought love was supposed to feel like, I'd have given you a different answer. Back then, I thought love meant safety, passion, that thrilling kind of connection where two people could feel like they were the only ones in the world. But what I've learned, the hard way, is that love is messy. It's complicated. It's not just the easy parts, the butterflies, and the late-night kisses. Sometimes, love is silence in a crowded room. It's longing for someone who's right beside you but somehow still out of reach. It's realizing that the person you fell for isn't always the person who can hold you the way you need. I thought tattoos were just ink on skin, a small rebellion, a little piece of me I could keep hidden to keep the peace. But it turned out they were a symbol of everything we couldn't say, everything we tried to ignore. They became the line where we drew our boundaries, and when those lines start to define a relationship, it's hard not to feel trapped. I needed emotional intimacy, the kind that lets you be raw and vulnerable without fear. But he showed love with touch, with closeness that sometimes felt too much, too fast, without the words to make it safe. And that disconnect made me retreat. I started to guard myself, to question whether I could want what I was being offered. I'm not sure if he ever fully understood how deeply that tattoo hurt him, or how deeply his silence and frustration hurt me. We were both scared, scared of losing each other, scared of facing the cracks in the foundation. And maybe that fear was louder than our love. I don't know where he is now, and maybe that's the point. Sometimes love doesn't mean staying. Sometimes it means learning to let go, to find your way back to yourself. I know I'm not the same woman I was when this started. I'm more honest with myself now, more aware of what I need and what I deserve. Desire isn't just about physical closeness. It's about feeling safe enough to want someone, to trust that they'll catch you when you fall. Emotional intimacy is the foundation. Without it, even the most passionate moments feel hollow. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: love isn't perfect. It's not always enough. But the love you give yourself, that's what lasts. It's the courage to be real, to be vulnerable, and to know when to hold on and when to walk away. I don't have all the answers. Maybe I never will. But I'm learning that sometimes, the hardest thing isn't losing someone else, it's losing yourself in the process. And maybe that's the most human thing of all.